So we're going to talk about that today. What do you do in a one-on-one? We're going to make sure we understand the framework, how they should be structured, what's the role of the sales manager, what's the role of the sales rep, what are expectations, what's the purpose, all that. That's the agenda. We're going to cover it all off. And normally we like to have a couple guests in this one. This one, though, we decided we're just going to go one-on-one. Just one-on-one with my friend Jeb Blount. Have you met Jeb Blount? I'm sure you have. Unless, of course, you've been living under a rock and you don't read, especially best-selling books like, Fanatical Prospecting or Sales EQ or Objections or the latest and greatest Inked. Have you bought it yet? He is with, of course, Sales Gravy. Check them out at salesgravy.com. What I like about Jeb's company, they call themselves the Sales Acceleration Company, which is all about making better sales teams fast. How's that for a value prop, right? When you're on that call and they answer that cold call, right? And you say, hey, I'm with the Sales Acceleration Company. I can make your sales team better, faster. Mic drop, silence, and watch them react. How do they respond to that? It's a killer opening, and that comes with experience and success, so we're thrilled to have him here. I've asked Jeb, and a kind of a two-pronged approach. I've asked him to come and represent today the Outbound Conference. He is one of the 4 original founders, and he's been doing it from the beginning. The show's gotten bigger every year, and which is crazy because his schedule is already so jam-packed. For him to actually give this much time and commitment one-on-one is a testament to the man and the content and the show. But I've also asked him to come here because he's been the sales guy. I mean, I don't know if you know his story. He sold uniforms door to door. I mean, you know where we bought it? I sold photocopiers door to door. He sold uniforms door to door. He's been that sales rep. He's been you. And then he's grown up and become the sales manager and been accountable. And today he consults world-class organizations across all industries, not just high tech like so many of them do. Industrial stuff, food, CPG, it doesn't matter. He's the man. He does a lot of stuff with the military. He does a lot of stuff with sports teams. And this is what's really cool about it. Why I thought he was the right guy to have here was because in the end, that one-on-one, no matter what industry you're in, the premise, the outcome, the goal, the objective, it's all the same. So with that, let me bring him on the show. Jeb, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. And I love this I love this subject. I love talking about what sales managers should be doing. And the one-on-one is a core piece of a sales management system. So I'm pleased to be here. Thank you so much for being our title sponsor at Outbound. We love VanillaSoft. We love you. And I can't wait to dive into this subject.
All right. So with no further ado, and by the way, he did make a mention there. If you don't know it, if you haven't figured it out by now, VanillaSoft is the title sponsor at Outbound. And I get asked this question a lot. In fact, Jeb asked me this question recently: is why did you choose to sponsor the show? And the answer was simply because it's the right show because there's no pitching and it's just content. And if you've been watching our webinars, listening to our podcasts, that's what we're all about. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, like for example, today's one-on-one has nothing to do with VanillaSoft as a sales engagement platform, but it has everything to do with you and your success and what we as a tribe are part of in the course of our career. And that's one of the reasons we became the title sponsor of Outbound, because it's all about giving back to the tribe. Not a commercial, just sharing. I don't think I've ever shared that before. Okay, so what we want to talk about today, the agenda is pretty straightforward. Before I do that, just some housekeeping. We do want to hear from you. All right, so you'll notice that there's a little chat window beside the live embedded player here on the VanillaSoft.com site. You can sign in as a guest. You don't need to register for it. Put your name in. Boom, you're in. But if you're a regular here in the webinars, I suggest you do make an account because then it never asks you again unless you clear cookies. And it's nice and easy. So we want the conversation going on live. Go there. Participate. If it's not showing up, just hit refresh. You'll be fine. We are recording this. We're going to send this to you within hours of this being done to the email address. You have it. And yes, you'll get a copy of the slides and everything else. With that all said, that's the gig. The agenda is straightforward. As I actually kind of gave it away already. We're going to talk about what is the purpose. Just let's level set. What's the purpose? How frequently should you do them? How should they be structured? What are some common mistakes people make when they structure them? Because I see that a lot. What's the sales manager's role? If you're a rank and file working the phones, this is going to be a great conversation for you. But even better, if you're a sales manager, what's the rep's role? And they do have a role. So that's the agenda. that out of the way, let's go to the next slide. It's really simple. One-on-ones, what's the purpose? Jeb.
So this is important, and let's think about most sales managers. So most sales managers today have pretty large spans of control. So if you're a field sales manager, your span of control is going to be anywhere from, say, 5 to 15 reps, which is really on the top end. But most field sales managers are going to be somewhere between 5 and 10, but you can get up to 15. If you're an inside sales manager, your span of control can be up to 25. And I've met a couple of sales managers that are running 30, which is insane for a sales manager on the inside. But a normal inside sales manager is going to have somewhere between, say, 10 and 20 salespeople reporting into them. So when we start thinking about the one-to-one and we start thinking about sales manager spans of control, we start thinking about time. If you think about a one-to-one, if you're running 30 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever, it's going to take so much time every single week for you to have one-on-ones. So for a sales manager, you got to start thinking, what's the purpose? Why am I doing this? The number one purpose for a one-on-one is finger on the pulse of your sales team. So you, during the week, are running around, you're getting deals done, you're sitting side by side with your salespeople, you're going to meetings, you're doing reports, you're in the CRM, you got a whole lot of things to do, and a lot of organizations are pulling you sideways away from selling activities. So for you, you need to make sure that you are clear exactly what's happening with your sales team. Now, Darryl, let me step back and explain something to sales managers. For a sales manager, your most valued trait is your ability to predict the future. I know this because your company asked you to make forecasts. Forecast is a prediction for the future. If you miss your forecast, you're a schmuck. I mean, you're a loser. If you hit your forecast regularly, you get promoted, you get bonuses, people trust you, they believe in you, you get more opportunity. So missing your forecast regularly is a bad thing to do as a sales manager because it diminishes your level of trust. Therefore, your job as a sales manager is to predict the future. You can't predict the future if you don't know what's happening in the present. So the core purpose of a one-on-one, number one purpose for you as a sales manager is you have a finger on the pulse of your sales team, and you have to do this every single week or you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble.
So now what's the purpose from the point of view of a sales rep? Because I would think it's to hold me accountable and to make sure I'm doing the activity numbers and to kick my ass if I'm not. But you tell me.
Okay, so if you think about that, that is actually not the purpose of a one-on-one. So the purpose of a one-on-one is not to kick anybody's ass. There is accountability in it because if you're the sales rep and you have to come to me every single week and tell me what you've been doing, explain your activity, explain your output, what you've accomplished, there is a level of accountability into it for it as a rep, and that's secondary to the primary purpose of a one-on-one, which is for the sales manager to keep their finger on the pulse of what's happening on the sales team, so that they know where to go to kick somebody's ass. So if you have let's say you have 10 people on a sales team, all 10 people aren't failing at one time. All 10 people aren't in trouble. All 10 people aren't looking at an abyss down the road. So for example, they've got a weak pipeline forming right now that tells you that a month down the road, they're gonna have a big problem. With a one-on-one, you can tell that now so you can go and fix that. So what a one-on-one tells the sales manager is where to go spend your time in order to coach your salespeople. For the salesperson, yes, there is an element of accountability. And for the salesperson, there is the opportunity for you to tell your sales manager things that you want them to know about what's happening in your world, that you need help with, that you see as a problem, especially when there may be market conditions that are changing, and it allows you to be the voice of your customer. So there are some opportunities for you in that one-on-one to express your opinion about things, which is good for you. And of course, there is the accountability feature, but more than that, it is the opportunity for the sales manager to assess where you are so that they can decide whether or not you're the person they need to spend time with coaching, or do they need to leave you alone and let you keep doing what you're doing because it's working.
So what I love about what you just said, and this may rock the world of a few people, so I want to bring it to your attention, guys, if you missed it, was he said, Jeb specifically said, it actually is not to kick your ass. Now, I can't speak for every single sales department, every pit. I don't know what's your dynamic, but take it from Jeb Blount, who knows a thing or two. It's not to kick your ass. So this isn't personal. This isn't about you. This is to help the sales manager figure out where the issues are in the team. It may not be you, in which case it's going to be a great conversation, hopefully. But they're going to know that, oh, I need to focus over here, or she's going to know I need to focus over there. Whatever she needs to figure out to do to run her sales organization, that's what this one-on-one is doing. You're an input to that process. You, by sharing with your sales manager, is allowing the company, because remember, you just heard Jeb say, the sales manager, her role is to forecast the future. And to do that, she needs input from you. So that is, most people just think it's to ride my ass, to give me grief if I'm not doing it. What I like about that, though, let me ask you this question here, Jeb. And I know there's dynamics and personalities at play here, but how forthright should I be in a one-on-one, typically with issues I'm facing, or being vulnerable to that? Yeah, I'm really struggling, hitting my activity numbers, or I'm struggling with our value prop, or what are, and I guess the other part of that is, how much am I allowed as a rep to offer up some excuses, or will I get my butt handed to me if I do that? So, two-part question.
Well, I mean, first of all, if you're a sales rep, you're probably going to be handing up excuses, because that's what salespeople do. I've been there, you've been there. I've got the T-shirt and the tattoos to prove that. So certainly you're probably going to be giving excuses, especially if you walk in and you had a crappy week or you didn't do your job. My best advice for the rep is don't give excuses. The best thing you can do for your leader is to say, I acknowledge that I had a bad week. I acknowledge that I let my guard down. I acknowledge that I didn't do a good job. And here's what my plan is to fix it. Because if I'm your sales manager and I sit down with you and you're going through your numbers and I see a weakness in your numbers, or I see an issue, and you can see the same thing I can see, and you can articulate what you're going to do to fix it, then I feel a lot more comfortable with you and saying to you, go do your thing. Let me know if there's a change in this, or if you have a problem. I can come, sit next to you or ask you a couple of questions, but I feel a lot more comfortable with you than a person who walks the door and says, well, it's, the economy's fault. It's the customer's fault. It's the open office's fault. It's the software's fault, whatever. If you're just blaming, excuse after excuse after excuse, that's when I, as a sales leader, move you from my okay list to my you-know-what list. And at that point, I'm asking some really hard questions about you as a salesperson, and as my employee. Are you a person that I can continue to work with? So I would say that the best thing you can do is leave the excuses at home. I would be transparent if you've made a mistake. Likewise, look, if you've had a big victory, walk through the door and say, look, I crushed it this week. I did this, and this. I'm doing really, really well, and here's what next week's going to look like. If we go back to predicting the future, likewise, I've been in sales long enough, and I've led enough salespeople, and all the salespeople who are listening to this are going to be mad at me instantly. But I'm very comfortable with saying salespeople, basically are delusional about what their numbers really are. They'll lie to you about what a forecast is going to be. I don't think that salespeople do it intentionally. I just think that they use sales math, which is to take whatever the number is going to be and double it. So yeah, I'm going to close that, and I'm going to do it next week. It's still going to take 6 months to close the deal. Or this deal is going to come in at $50,000, really, but we're going to forecast it at 100. So I'm very careful as a sales manager to always check the numbers and always look ahead and always pay attention to that. But as a salesperson, if you're able to articulate to me what your pipeline looks like, what you believe that you're going to close, if I can hear you talking about next steps so that you've got velocity in your pipeline, and when I ask you about a deal, you can say, yeah, my next meeting is this is what I'm going to accomplish. If you know your numbers and you know your stuff and you know your customers and you know your pipe, for me as a sales manager, when I walk out of that one-on-one, checking the pulse, I'm saying, you're okay, you're fine, and I'm going to focus my time and attention on someone else. At the same time, I think it's important, if you need help and you want help, that you express it and say that.
Okay, so I want to hammer a point that Jeb really hit home, and I loved what he said. One of the things he was implying, he was fundamentally implying, that if you know your numbers, you know your customers, what he's really saying was you need to be prepared. As a rep, you need to know this stuff. You need to know this. He talks about being accountable, and he gave a lot of examples about, yeah, this one's struggling, but this one's going well. And he was, giving you analogies. Being accountable, let me give you a lesson here as a marketer. As a marketer, we're taught to get ahead of the message. So when we have bad news, the last thing we want is for the news to get out there and the world finds out about it. And then we go, oh, Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's bad. No, I don't know what's going on. We messed up. That's bad. You get ahead of it. So when you got bad news, you lead with it. I got to tell you, we got some bad news coming down the pipe, and this is why. But here's what we're doing about it. It's no different than you have earnings announcements. They lead with, here's the bad news. This is why it's bad news. And here's what we're doing about it. Treat that with accountability, with just trust, and you're working together. Jeb gave golden advice there. Okay, so that is the purpose of the meeting. I bet you we talked on that way longer than you expected, but I love what we came up with in that one. Now, the next one should be a simple question. I don't know if it is. Jeb, I got to ask you, how frequently should we have the one-on-one?
Every week, Monday or Tuesday. So some businesses, Mondays are disaster. So Mondays are complete chaos. So if you work in a company or a business where Mondays are chaos, don't do your one-on-ones on Monday because they'll get skipped. Do them on Tuesday. But the best time to have the one-on-one is Monday. The worst day to have a one-on-one is on Friday. And a lot of sales managers put them on Friday. But the problem with the one-on-one on Friday is that you have the one-on-one. Let's say there's a couple of messages that you want to send. Let's say that you want to, you want to get the benefit of the accountability and of the conversation, which you get. Well, if you do it on Friday afternoons and then everybody goes home for the weekend, by Monday, they've forgotten everything. So if you want to impact your week forward, change the future, do them on Mondays. And, and like what you just said, look, if you tell me bad news today, and you give me time to deal with the bad news, we have an opportunity to change what the news is going to be. We can change the future. But if you surprise me with it, there's no opportunity to change it. That's a really bad thing. Same thing. So for me, and my best advice is do them on Monday mornings. That would be the very best time that you can do them. And if your business is utter chaos on Mondays, shift it to Tuesday, but only those 2 days of the week, every single week.
And just to hammer this point home, what if I'm doing them on Thursdays or Fridays as the weekend? What's the downside to doing that for all those managers listening right now feeling a little bit uncomfortable?
If you do it on Thursdays and Fridays, the downside is that everything that you do in your one-on-one evaporates, including your awareness evaporates. The weekend comes, you forget, Monday's Groundhog Day, you're starting all over again. So you don't get the benefit of the messages that you're sending on Monday impacting your sales team all week. So Thursdays and Fridays are just absolutely the worst day to do them because it basically takes, you lose the entire week of making change or changing what's happening or planning your coaching out because you waited till Friday to do the one-on-one and you checked the box and everybody went home.
So let me give a variation of what Jeb just said. The reason I like doing it on Monday, ideally, although Tuesday is good plan B, as he said, is because remember, the sales manager's job is to have the finger on the pulse of the team. Jeb told us that. So if I'm talking to my sales rep on a Monday or Tuesday, and in that one-on-one, the sales rep, she says to me, Darryl, I'm not going to do well on this deal or this situation, or I'm struggling here, I'm struggling there. I can give some coaching, and I can come back Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and say, how'd that go? Okay, just try this change. Okay, how'd that go? Okay, just try this change, all right? And I can coach them through that because I'm supposed to have my finger on the pulse of the sales team. My job as a sales manager is not to wait and do damage control when stuff, goes to hell in a handbag. I'm supposed to be active and involved in helping, not micromanaging. Let me ask you that. I know we're still on frequency, but I didn't really ask about this in our purpose conversation, Jeb. What about those sales managers that want to have their finger on the pulse, but in reality, they're just like micromanaging you and you're suffocating?
Well, that's different than a one-on-one. I mean, you can have a one-on-one that's micromanaging. We'll talk about that in a moment and the mistake that salespeople make with one-on-ones. But for sales leaders who are micromanaging, typically what micromanaging looks like as a sales leader is that you're running all the deals. You are parachuting in like a commando every time someone needs to close something because your salespeople can't do it better than you. You're asking every 10 minutes about something happening versus having some trust for your salespeople. My advice for sales managers is really simple. Your job is to be a coach. And for a coach, it's a question that you ask that's way more important than anything that you say or do. As a sales leader, you get paid for what your people do, not what you do. Therefore, if you are doing things, micromanaging, right, and those things are interfering with your salespeople, that is not in your best interest. So most important for the sales manager is you've got your finger on the pulse of your sales team. You have an idea of what's happening. And then once you leave the one-on-one, now you're thinking, what questions should I be asking my salespeople that provokes awareness that they need to change? What am I going to ask them that challenges their current thinking or makes them look at different possibilities? How am I engaging them? Where do I need to get myself involved in deals that they're working on? Are there bigger deals where we need to bring a team in and I need to go get resources for them? What roadblocks are they facing that's impacting their activity that I could move out of the way so that I can keep the activity going? What reinforcers, good or bad or negative or positive, are either positively or negatively impacting my sales team and their activity, that if I were to change those reinforcers, I could get higher productivity. I could maybe even double or triple my activity. The reason that you do finger on the pulse is so that you can rise above the noise, gain that awareness, and know exactly where to insert yourself so that you can have the greatest impact on your sales team's productivity. That's way different than micromanaging. And micromanaging is, you're just being a nag and you're doing everything. And frankly, you believe that you are more important than your sales team. And the good news, Darryl, is that in today's world, it's very, very hard as a sales leader to survive long if that's your methodology for leading your sales team. It's just, we have so much data and we're managing our sales organization so tightly that it's difficult. And I'm not saying that there aren't bad sales managers out there. There are, and if you're a salesperson and you're working for a really poor sales manager, it's probably impacting your income and you need to think about what you're going to do. But the good news is that most sales managers, and I interact with tons and tons of sales leaders because we teach a course called Coaching Ultra High Performance, and we work hand in hand with them, coaching them. Most sales leaders today truly want to do the right thing. They really do want to make an impact. They really value their ability to coach and help their salespeople, and they want to see their salespeople win. So most sales leaders have the best intentions in the world and are not engaging in destructive micromanagement.
Okay, so we've talked about the purpose, we've talked about the frequency, which is weekly. What we've not talked about is the structure. So how long should it be? How should it be organized? Who says what, when? What tools do we need? Is there a repeatable flow? Talk to me. What is the structure of that one-on-one?
Okay, so what I'm about to say is going to challenge a lot of what most sales managers think about these one-on-ones. So I want you to think again about span of control. So imagine that you have 10 salespeople. So if you have 10 salespeople and you're doing one-to-ones, now some of those one-to-ones will be in person, some of them will be on the phone, some will be video call, depending on how your people are spread out. But just imagine you have 10 people and you do an hour per person, that's 10 hours. Guess what? Your one-to-one is not going to happen on Monday. You're not going to get everybody done. If it's 30 minutes, it's half of that. It's 5 hours. If you do 5 hours of one-on-ones, it's not going to happen. And this is why, by the way, one-on-ones don't happen every single week. And by the way, why they happen irregularly. So sales managers have the best intention to do one-on-ones, but they know they got 5 hours to invest. So everybody doesn't get one, or they're not the same, or they're not consistent. And the problem with that as a sales leader is if you have one-to-one scheduled and you don't show up to them or you don't do them, you lose trust. And when you lose trust of your salespeople, your ship is sunk. Trust is everything. And part of that trust is that when you say you're going to do something, you show up and you get it done. So they should last no more than 15 minutes. If you try to do them 30 minutes an hour, it's not gonna work for you. You're not gonna get them done. So they're 15 minutes long, with the caveat that with new salespeople, you're gonna run a little bit longer. So you may run 30, 45 minutes when you have a brand new salesperson, and that will diminish as they move through their onboarding. Now, you think to yourself, well, 15 minutes isn't a lot of time, but there's something else that's important as well. Your job as a sales manager is to show up. The other mistake that sales managers do is they're preparing for their one-to-ones. So again, you got 10, 15 salespeople working for you, and you're trying to prepare for the one-on-one, and you're spending 20 minutes to 30 minutes preparing for each one-on-one, and you're doing all that work, and you're trying to do that on a Friday or a Sunday. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get it done. You're going to walk in unprepared, so the one-on-ones go all over the place. So your job as a sales leader is to show up. Your salesperson's job is to come prepared. Your job is to listen, because the one-on-one is finger on the pulse. So as a sales leader, what you have to say is, this is the structure, this is what I expect you to bring to my one-on-one salesperson. And you're going to bring in, your pipeline, the customers you're working on, what you did last week, what you did this week, any roadblocks you're running into, any issues that you have with making forecasts, things I need to know about. that type of thing. So you're going to bring those things in. And they're going to be prepared. So each salesperson can spend 15, 20 minutes preparing for their one-to-one versus you spending 5 hours trying to prepare for your salespeople's one-on-one. So A, you dictate what the structure is going to look like. So you tell your salespeople, here's exactly what I want every single time. The one-on-ones don't change. They're the exact same cadence every single time. That way, all you have to do as a sales leader is you show up. The salesperson gives you their presentation. Here's what I'm doing, this, this, this. Your job is to ask questions. It's to listen and pay attention to pattern breaks or issues or problems, or even a salesperson where you kind of don't feel like they're telling you the truth. You're asking questions and listening, and therefore you walk out with a good idea of where you need to spend your time.
I love it. So I'm trying to think from a sales rep's point of view, because we've really hammered the whole sales manager. Their job is to listen, to come up and listen for pattern breaks and ask questions and drill down. From a rep's point of view, I mean, this is straightforward stuff. If you don't know your numbers, you shouldn't be in sales. Yes, I get that you need to prepare. I mean, how do I meet with my CEO every single week, and usually what I do is I have a staff meeting on Monday and I meet with the CEO on Tuesday, and everything I'm talking about to the CEO on Tuesday is what we prepared and covered on Monday. So I knew the issues and I could preempt it. I could talk about what the wins, the challenges, the losses, and I knew what the go forward plan is. This is no different. So I guess if you're a rep struggling with preparing for this, Jeb, is there any advice you can give them? I mean, is this a tools issue? Is it like, how do they make sure they know the state of the nation of their sales activity?
Well, that's part of the one-on-one. I mean, part of the one-on-one is if you show up to my meeting and you don't know what you're talking about, that tells me a lot as a sales manager of what I need to do. Like, that's my clue. Daryl's got a problem. Like, something's wrong here. And in some cases, it could be that you're looking for another job. I mean, in some cases, you could be completely, checked out. So as a sales leader, that's what I'm saying. The one-on-one is a finger on the pulse. If a salesperson shows up and they have no idea what they did or they didn't do, we have a bigger issue. So as a sales manager, what I do is I just put that on my list and go, okay, well, I need to schedule some time with Darryl. So what I would say is at the end of your one-on-one, I might say nothing, or I might say, we got a problem here. Something's not right. Why don't you and I get together this afternoon for an hour and let's do a pipeline review? That way, I don't have to do a pipeline review with Mary, who came in and she's got a full pipe. She knows where everything is. She's cranking. She's got meetings set. She's closing business. I can just leave Mary alone, let her do her job. But Darryl, you walked in and you sounded like you didn't have a clue, like you hadn't even been at work in 2 weeks. We're going to stop and we're going to talk about that. So as a sales leader, that tells me what I need to do. As a salesperson, I mean, you got to think, you walk into your manager. I mean, Darryl, you walk into your CEO and you have no clue what to say or do. Your CEO is going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. This doesn't make any sense. Darryl, you're a pretty good CMO. What's wrong? So as a salesperson, know your numbers, know your stuff. And as a sales manager, shut up, listen, ask questions, pay attention, check the pulse. When people are doing a great job, tell them they're doing a great job. If people are trying really hard, figure out how you can help them and work with them. But for you, all of those signals are clues of where you need to spend the limited amount of time you have as a sales leader to coach, train, and develop your salespeople.
So it's one of the things I really like about what Jeb talked on there, and he covered a lot. But one of the things that really jumped out at me, and it sounds so simple when I want to say this to you, is he said, when as a sales manager you uncover a problem, his immediate reaction was, when he realizes it's bigger than it can be covered off in this 15-minute window, is to schedule a time slot over here later in the day or tomorrow or whenever. And the point being, what did he open up by saying? He said in his example, he had 5 hours to do all these one-on-ones. And he says, if you don't show up, trust is broken. And the reps are sitting there waiting for you. So as a sales manager, you don't need to solve it here and now, but you do need to solve it. Just make sure you keep your schedule so you can go through the whole team. So now you have your finger on the pulse. That's great. Let's move it along. We've talked a lot about this already on both the sales manager side and the sales rep side. So these may be quick conversations, but let's talk about the sales manager's role. I've heard you say over and over again, your job is to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Is that their only role, or do they have other roles here too?
Your role as a sales manager for the one-on-one is to show up and shut up. I mean, literally, that's what you should be doing. You should show up. The salesperson is presenting their information. You should ask relevant questions, open-ended questions. Tell me a little bit more about that. You should have a clock on your desk. At 15 minutes, it's over, it's done, you're out. That way you can compress the time it takes you to do the one-on-ones. We know they're going to happen. Then you can make choices based on the one-on-ones about where you're going to schedule and spend your time that particular week, whether you're going to do one-to-ones, what have you. Now, that's different than a sales meeting. When you have a sales meeting, so typically, if I'm doing a sales meeting, I'm going to do my sales meeting first thing in the morning. On Monday, boom, sales meeting is going to run 30 minutes. That's my meeting. I'm preparing for it. I'm building it. I'm setting it up. I'm doing training. I'm sending a message. That's what I'm doing. After that, I'm running one-on-ones. I'm probably running a high-intensity prospecting block, usually telephone during the one-on-one. So we're getting a lot of activity done while people are waiting to do their one-on-ones. They're doing something. But I'm moving through them on a 15-minute pace, and I'm listening. I'm taking notes. Then my job is to sit down and think about what I heard, what I learned, what's happening with my sales team, and then think about it as a sales leader. Like, what do I need to do next? Where do I need to spend my time? Where do I need to put my efforts? Where are there problems that I need to get ahead of? Maybe I'm noticing that I've gotten, 3 weeks in a row, I'm picking on Darryl, but Darryl comes in and you're completely disengaged. So maybe I need to take you to lunch and find out what's really going on. And at the same time, call HR and tell them to open up a rec because there's a chance that I may be losing you, and I don't want to I don't want to be down a head count. So if I'm thinking ahead of the game because I'm doing those things, it works. So it keeps me from getting surprised. But my job really is to show up. I shouldn't have to do any work as a sales manager to show up to a one-to-one. The salespeople can bring me all the information I need as long as I tell them exactly what I want.
I love that Jeb is taking me into lunch while he's working with HR to actively backfill me. That is a sign of a good manager. I quite like that one. Okay, that's the manager's role. Got it. What's the rep's role? I know we've talked about this and just know your pipeline and deliver it and be accountable. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that they need to be aware of?
I think for the rep, I don't think so. I think for the rep, your job is to show up and use that time wisely. If you need help, say I need help. If you're running into problems, say I run into problems. If you're having victories, celebrate the victories. Make sure that you tell your sales manager, here are the things that I'm doing really, really well. Sometimes the sales manager might not know that. If you are seeing, especially if you're seeing issues with competitors in the marketplace that may be impacting your business, make sure that you're telling the sales manager that. Sometimes it feels like you're sending that message and it's going into a black hole. But across an organization, if you get enough signals, people start paying attention to it, and the organization can make an adjustment. But for the salesperson, the most important thing I can tell you is you show up and you're totally prepared. You're transparent about what's happening in your world. If you are having a slump or you're making some mistakes, then be honest about it and come prepared with a fix. What are you going to do? I would avoid excuses and I would talk about solutions. That's the best thing you can do working with your leader. And then if I were you and you want to get promoted, pay attention to great sales managers and what they're doing, and then start in that so that you can get promoted. And if you're a sales manager and you've got some people or a person who is ready to move to the next level, bring them into your one-on-ones with you and let them do some mentoring, or allow them to run the one-on-ones with your new people that take a little bit more time so they can take some pressure off of you as well, and you can get them ready for their next move.
All right. So that's the core content I want to get through, but I'm going to go into overtime with a bonus round question. I'm going to set it up here for Jeb Blount, the consummate sales trainer, professional coach, and best-selling author, if I haven't mentioned that once or twice. My question is this. I do all this. How, as a sales manager or as a sales rep, how does the one-on-one and all the information we glean from this feed into a formal coaching and training program? And not every company has a sales enablement team or official trainers, but some do. So maybe you can compare and contrast, a small versus medium versus large company. How do the one-on-ones influence the coaching and the training and education of those reps moving up as we progress?
Well, the easy thing for the one-on-one is, simply is if I'm a sales leader and I notice that, let's say I've got a pattern in my team where they're having a hard time leaving a voicemail. And I've got a trainer that can teach them how to leave a voicemail. I'll go get a trainer to teach them how to do a voicemail. Frankly, if it was me, I wouldn't go get the trainer to do the voicemail. I would make that part of my sales meeting. And so my sales meeting, I would have a training with my salespeople on how to leave a voicemail. Probably get my best rep to lead that training. I would do that. So for me as a sales leader, and this is just how I operate, the sales team is my tribe and I own them. And sales enablement doesn't own them. Training, learning, and development doesn't own them. None of those people own them. I own them. And my job is to make my people better. If I see a pattern where they need formal training or they need to go do something to re-up a skill and there's a training available for them, then I'll move them into that situation. Most of the times, though, that's not the case. Most of the time I have a good group of people who are trained and they're ready to go. Or I've got some new people who are going through formal onboarding, and if they're going through formal onboarding, they're already with sales enablement or whatever. So this concept of everything feeding into some formal coaching and training program, if you're doing things like regular monthly reviews with people, you could put those into the system that would manage all of that. But your one-to-one's typically not going to do that because it's allowing you to see patterns on your team, and then you're going to go spend time with your team. So if you're a sales leader, for example, if I need training, I'm typically going to put that in my sales meeting. But if I have someone who needs coaching, then I'm going to schedule time with them to spend with them side by side. If I'm an inside sales leader, then I'm going to go put my rear end in a chair next to them, and I'm going to spend a day with them or spend a morning with them. And I'm going to listen to their calls, and I'm going to coach in the moment, and I'm going to help them get better in the moment. I'm going to pay attention to that. If it's a person who cannot do the job, then obviously there's a mechanism in the organization to figure out if there's a better place for them or they need to go find someplace else to work. But that's a hiring issue, not necessarily a coaching issue. But I'm going to spend time with them. If I'm a field sales manager, I'm going to go get in a car and I'm going to spend a day with them. And if they're a sales manager, I'm looking at you, look at me eyeball to eyeball. The one place in your sales day that you're going to have the greatest amount of impact on your salespeople is side by side coaching them, one-to-one, helping them improve in the moment. Now, you might let them make 5 calls, and you're going to stop and have a conversation about them. You're going to ask questions. You're going to help them get better. You're going to help them improve, and you're going to anchor that improvement with feedback, positive feedback. Hey, nice job, well done. And then you're going to come back and do it again. You're going to use your one-on-one to test whether or not the coaching you did had an impact. So if you're a sales leader, you're going to do those things. At the same time, you have to have a system that's going to include pipeline reviews, formal pipeline reviews. You may choose to do formal pipeline reviews where you do them with one person. You may choose to do formal pipeline reviews where you do them with your entire team. If you choose to do them with your entire team, you have to have something where the entire team is engaged, where they're making comments on the pipeline and not just reading numbers to each other. If you do it one-on-one, then you're going to make those choices. I'm going to do it on a side-by-side. I'm going to do it on a Friday, whatever. You also need to look at performance management. And performance management, Darryl, is when you bring in learning and development, HR, or sales enablement, or wherever that function lives. And in that case, you're looking at, do we have personal development plans for these individuals? Have we laid that out so we know how this person is growing, where they want to go in the organization? Do we have business development plans for my account executives who have territories or who have, who've assigned accounts? What are they doing to develop those accounts? What are they doing to look out to where their competitors are? And with my account managers, do we have account plans for every account manager so that we have, expansion goals and we have retention goals with those accounts? Those are formal performance plans, and those things should be in place long before you're in a situation where you're doing HR plans, which is a PIP or an RIP, depending on how you want to say it. So you should have all those things in place. And by the way, if you're doing one-on-ones on a regular basis and you're coaching on a regular basis and you're doing pipeline reviews and performance reviews, if you have someone who's not performing, then you have the opportunity to get ahead of that curve and maybe even stop and say, I'm going to work on a formal 30-day process with you to improve your performance before we go the HR route, which is typically a performance improvement plan or something called that lives in enablement, lives in L&D, lives in HR. But as a sales leader, your job is to take your tribe and make them better fast. And that's going to happen primarily through making sure that you know where to spend your time and with whom to spend your time, and then spending your time with them. And the biggest mistake, Darryl, that sales leaders make, biggest mistake, is they're sitting looking at a dashboard, they're sending emails to people, they're not with people. You want your salespeople to get better, spend your time with people. And here's my message to you. If you're a sales leader and you are not in front of one of your salespeople, then you are not doing your job. You are unemployed.
Lead from the front, not from the rear. A very true, tried, and proven trait of the world's best leaders. I love that, Jeb. So let's recap. Today's conversation was around the one-on-one. What did Jeb tell us? We went through this whole process. And let me tell you, he told us a lot. If you're overwhelmed, I am too. So let me see what I got here. The purpose is for the sales manager to have their finger on the pulse of the sales team. They have one job, as Jeb liked to say, and that is to forecast the future when it comes to sales. So to do that, they need to do this. From the sales rep's point of view, the purpose is not to kick your ass, but to make sure you're accountable, make sure that you're talking to your manager, and that you have an open dialogue and you know what's going on. So that's the purpose. You should do them weekly. Ideally Monday mornings, but no later than Tuesday. That way it's still topical, it's current, and you can build upon the lessons and the conversations throughout the remainder of the week. So that's when you do them. They should last no more than 15 minutes. Maybe longer if you're new at onboarding, but even that, by the time if you onboard correctly, by the time you're fully onboarded, you're back down to that 15 minutes. The last thing you want to do is miss a meeting or hold up the rest of the team, because then they start to lose faith in you and it just becomes a real kerfuffle. The manager's job on the structured context is to show up, or as we can say, show up, shut up, and listen. All right. So that's what you want to do. The rep is simply to arrive prepared. All right. No, stop with the excuses. Just be forthright and be accountable, but have a plan. And by the way, your manager can help you make that plan if you don't know the idea. The sales manager's role is to ask relevant, open-ended questions. I love the idea instead of a clock, 15 minutes counting down, so we know exactly how much time we have left there. And it's to help you as a sales manager make your choices on where you're going to spend the rest of your week, leading from the front, coaching your team. It is very different than a sales meeting. That's your meeting. This is a one-on-one. The sales rep's role, if you're a sales rep listening, show up, use that time wisely. It is a one-on-one resource available to you. If you need help, tell them. If you're having victories, celebrate them. Be prepared, be transparent, have a game plan for any issues you identified. No excuses, only solutions. That, ladies and gentlemen, according to Mr. Jeb Blount, is the purpose of the one-on-one. If you missed his details at the start of the show, we'll bring him back up here again right now, where you can see his email address. You can see every single way to hit him up at salesgravy.com. He's got lots of content. He's got great books. If you can't get the man in person, get to, Outbound Conference, or go buy his book and read that. There's lots of ways to consume his knowledge. Jeb, thank you for joining us today. I am thrilled and delighted and glad you could join us. I am looking forward to seeing you soon in Atlanta at Outbound. I'll see you there. Although I suspect I'm going to be at the back of a very, very long line. Are you doing a book signing when you're there? I'm just kind of curious.
When you see it, like if I stand in one place, a line's going to form and everybody has books. So it doesn't matter where you go. So everybody's buying books. People bring their books. I'll sign everything that you bring to me. Everything will get signed, and everybody's book will get signed. But yeah, it's a really interesting process. Where I literally, if I sit still for 2 seconds, a line forms. We're signing books.
I love it. Okay, so with that, if you missed it, Jeb made reference to it earlier. Jeb was on the podcast Inside Sales. Check it out at insidesales.com. It was fantastic. I won't tell you what we talked about. You'll have to go there to find out for yourself. But with that said, folks, I want to respect your schedule. We're basically out of time and giving you enough time to prepare for that next meeting, which might just be a one-on-one. Make sure you have solutions. No excuses. In the meantime, folks, we're out of here. My name is Darryl Praill. This, my friends, is VanillaSoft. It's been great talking. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.